Hey Lisa, you asked about the Democratic primaries being rigged, and I'm going to make this in video form because it's just far too long to explain by typing it out. Recall back in the 2020 primary, there were 19 Democrats running for president. One of them obviously being Joe Biden with his No Malarkey Express in Iowa. And Kamala Harris, of course, was there, and certainly pointing out that he was a racist in prior times when he talked about school busing, turning schools into a racial jungle, and calling, teenage black men super predators as he was passing the bill to incarcerate many of them throughout the late 1980s, early 1990s. But aside from all that, there were 19 candidates, one of them being Tulsi Gabbard. And Tulsi was never even allowed on the stage, for one. They constantly kept changing the requirements to be put on stage, and she kept meeting the requirements, so they would just change the requirements again. So ultimately, she was never allowed on stage. So that leaves you with 18 and Tulsi Gabbard. In the Iowa primary, if you recall, the Democrats came up with this new app. Now, the Iowa is not actually a primary. The Iowa caucus is very different from most elections. They don't have a ballot box. You don't go into a booth and you cast a ballot, or you punch a screen, or you do anything like that. Instead, what you do is you meet in some kind of a church, a conference hall, a school, or wherever. That's your essentially polling location. And they have all the different representatives for all the different candidates who get a few minutes to speak, and they speak about their candidate and about what their candidate stands for and the platform and so forth and so on. At which point in time, they then say, okay, everybody, you need to go select the candidate you're going to be with. And this is done in view of everybody. So you either go to a particular room, or you go to a particular table, and you either sign up or you stand there and they do a physical count. But your vote is not in secret during a caucus. Your vote is right there. You say, I'm for Bernie Sanders, or I'm for Joe Biden, or I'm for, I'm trying to think, well, what was the guy's name that was from California, the businessman, Asian guy, I can't remember his name at the moment, or I'm for Kamala Harris, or whatever. So if you may recall, they had this new app they were going to use for this caucus. The Democratic Party loudly proclaimed that they were going to use this app, and that was going to speed things up and so forth and so on. And Homeland Security said, hey, would you like us to stress test this app for you? And they said, absolutely not. We don't want you touching the app. Get away from our app. So Homeland Security did not stress test their app or do anything with their app, for that matter. And the night of the Iowa caucus, the election was over, and they said, okay, yeah, we're working on the app now, and we're going to have an answer for you here in just a little bit. And about an hour later, they came out and said, well, we're having some problems with the app. Now, rumor has it, coming out of Bernie Sanders' camp, Joe Biden came in dead last. And it was about an hour later when Bernie came out and goes, I won. We had our own people there, and we did our own count of all the candidates, and I won. The Democratic Party went absolutely dark and silent, wouldn't speak to anybody for a week. Would not talk to anybody for a week. The next week was the New Hampshire primary, as you may recall. And that Bernie was expected to win the New Hampshire primary. Being from that area, they expected him to win it. Joe Biden didn't even show up in New Hampshire. He just went straight to South Carolina. And then the day before the New Hampshire primary, the Democratic Party came out and said, well, we couldn't make the app work. We couldn't figure anything out. But we do know that Pete Buttigieg won a couple of precincts, and so we're giving it to Pete Buttigieg. And nobody said a word about this. Nobody, not one single candidate complained. Heck, not even Bernie Sanders complained. Okay, we're giving Iowa to Pete Buttigieg. Of course, Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire. It was expected. Meanwhile, Joe Biden gets with the one senator down in South Carolina. I can't think of his name, but he's got a pretty good machine, especially with a lot of the Black Baptist churches. And of course, in South Carolina, Joe Biden won, and he carried a vast majority of the black vote in South Carolina. The very next day, Kamala Harris drops out of the race, and within 1 week, all other 17 candidates, absent Tulsi Gabbard, of course, she was the 18th, all other 17 candidates had dropped out of the race. So yeah, I have a pretty good suspicion that the fix was in on the Democratic primary. They wanted Biden all along. He was going to be a sock puppet so that Obama could have his third term. You know, Obama would write the script, or Obama's people would write the script, and Joe Biden would read the teleprompter, completely oblivious to what he was actually saying or the things he were signing. If you remember, he had a whole stack of what do you call them, the executive orders to sign on day one. He couldn't have told you what was in any one of those things, but he signed them all. And by the way, yeah, Donald Trump said he was going to be a dictator on day one because he was going to go and he was going to sign executive orders that tall as well, undoing all of those executive orders. So yeah, he was going to be a dictator on day one, but only on day one. But you know, don't let things like MSNBC and CNN get in the way of facts. So anyway, yeah, that's why I made the comment that they rigged the primary, you know, because using voter or having to listen to what voters say becomes very troublesome when they decide something you don't want them to decide. So yeah, they just figure it's better just to get the voters out of the whole process. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Bye.